here, and there's a relationship between alcohol and blockchain. I spent some time running running marketing for an alcohol startup based in Los Angeles. I haven't been drinking today, I swear. So yeah, I ran the marketing for an alcohol startup in Los Angeles, and I was doing some research on different avenues of marketing and advertising because it's actually highly restricted in what you can say in various states, and it's highly regulated, kind of like blockchain, and I ended up in blockchain in late 2017, and what interested the company that I was applying at was that I knew how to do marketing in a very regulated industry. They actually told me that it was valuable to them that I knew what it was like to do marketing in an industry that, we had to deal with a lot of rules and regulations. So, nice coincidence there. So I'm Anissa Kashbaktian. I will be speaking at a very, very high level on blockchain in the mainstream, kind of a marketing perspective. So I don't know, I kind of missed the first presentation, but I hope that it's not too much of a repeat. So I'm the co-founder and head of marketing for Digital Asset Advisors. We're a blockchain and emerging tech consulting group based out of Los Angeles. We have clients all over the country and all over the world, and we have clients in various industries. Just a little bit of a few fun facts about me. I'm a Southern California native. I grew up in Orange County, and I live in Southern California. Not really a fun fact. It's not actually fun at all. I'm really allergic to cats, and which is sad because I think they're so precious. And I told you a little bit about my background. So yes, I did work in alcohol. I worked in a lot of consumer goods related industries, retail, e-commerce. I worked in media and entertainment. I spent a lot of my career in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, as well as Los Angeles, and actually also in Seattle, so not too far from here. And I'm interested in very consumer-facing blockchain projects and solutions in kind of these lifestyle type industries. I'm interested in seeing these projects come out that you don't really need to understand blockchain or even know that blockchain exists in the background to be able to use it. Kind of like, how if I was to call my mom, how that call gets connected, or how text messaging works, or how the internet even works. So that's personally what I like. So I want to talk about the industry and how the blockchain landscape has emerged. So when I talk about the past, to me it's pretty much like before mid to late 2018, so mid to late last year, and today, today. So what we experienced a lot of in the past was an abundance of ICOs. Everyone was doing these unrestricted public sales, quite a lot of these sales really targeted to retail investors with a low net worth, as opposed to, today we're seeing a lot of STOs, this, tokenization of securities, accredited investors, and traditional money coming in, VCs. But in the past, it was not so much that. It was these people who were either these like diehard blockchain maximalists, crypto maximalists, people who really wanted to see this transform the world, as well as people who were riding the train of like, let's make money really quick, riding that hype train. And we also saw a lot of these projects basically putting most of their attention on the blockchain industry and getting media in blockchain, having influencers in blockchain promote their projects, primarily because they were raising money through these retail investors, and it was all about the public sale, but it was not a lot of thought about what's happening next in marketing especially. So after the sale's over, now what? And now we're seeing, and another thing is, it was a lot of the sentiment of blockchain is we're gonna create a new paradigm, and if you're not on board, sorry, you're gonna be left behind. But today we're seeing it be a little bit more of this, this sentiment that, we're evolving into a new paradigm, and we understand that we need buy-in from existing stakeholders because it's important that we create this together. And so today we're seeing a lot of these companies be interested in those industries that they're trying to disrupt or transform, as well as those industries having interest in blockchain. So, you know, a week or two ago, the LA Clippers announced that they're going to be putting on these experiential events to educate their attendees in blockchain. Starbucks last year announced that they are looking at blockchain as a possible solution for monitoring their traceability and kind of have it be a part of their supply chain. Let's see, Ticketmaster recently announced that they're looking at blockchain, or they've partnered with a blockchain event solution to combat fraud and ticketing. And naturally today, there's a much stricter regulatory landscape. And, you know, so it's not just with the SEC. Last year, Facebook came out and said no longer will be allowing any Facebook ads or any paid advertising that has to do with crypto, as well as Google, as well as MailChimp, although Facebook and Google has announced that they've reversed that, but it's not the same. It's still somewhat regulated, and I think people are not forgiving the fact that there was so many scams that happened in the past. So the old strategy was, well, the old days, a lot of people just looked at white papers and roadmaps. They thought that was the truth. And companies were making so much money, raising tens of millions of dollars basically on a white paper and a roadmap. And then you started to see a lot of these companies, it turned out some of these that raised a lot of money were just a copy and paste from other ones that had raised a lot of money. So the public started to become a little bit smarter and looked at, okay, we need to vet the whole package. Let's look at the team. Where did they come from? Okay, that's credibility. We don't want to get scammed. If they're really on LinkedIn, good. They're real people. Also, what industries did they work in before? What did they do before? Another thing was looking at social media. How many followers do they have? How many likes are they getting? What's their engagement look like? And so a lot of attention got put on those various channels, in particular Telegram. So I've watched the kind of rise and fall and the demand of the importance of Telegram. And it used to be a really big thing for investors to see, okay, how many followers do you have? And now it's I actually advise a lot of clients, you don't really need a Telegram unless you're doing something that's open source and you want to engage devs, or maybe it's better for you to just get on Discord. But what happened was that people are buying followers, buying people to get into their Telegram groups, as well as buying followers and likes and comments on all their various social media channels, which, I mean, morality and authenticity aside, eventually that started to come to the surface and people were noticing there wasn't any authentic engagement. Be a part of, primarily because of these public sales and trying to engage people again in those in that network. The new strategy is more so, let's establish real credibility. Like, do you have a legitimate business plan? What does that look like? Build an honest community. Now, I'm a huge advocate for spending money on marketing and advertising, just not spending money paying for those things that is, again, inauthentic. And so you build a community that doesn't actually exist. So how can you do that in an honest way? So when you build your community, acquire real customers, have strategic partnerships, credible advisors. That's an endorsement of your brand and what you're creating versus the followers and the likes and those paid comments. So a lot of this has to do with quality, and I'm a huge advocate of doing your due diligence, meaning make sure you know who you're partnering with. If it's a company or someone you want to associate with, or it's an advisor. I've been seeing a lot of people burn because they are, they brought on, for example, a really kind of a bad egg advisor. Actually, recently, a friend of mine who just started a blockchain ed tech company, she called me to tell me that she didn't really know what to do. She brought on someone who, not even an advisor, he has a pretty big blockchain project that's transforming transportation in a specific market, and she met him at an event, and he said, I will do your MVP for only a few $1,000s. I want to do it today. I mean, it was like within 24 hours of meeting, he was like, I'm all in. I need to do this for you. And she agreed, and then turned out that he was arrested for wire fraud. He also had stolen on Reddit, there was a lot of allegations that he had stolen his business idea from someone else, and there's some legal issues there. So that's a big thing, and I know it's so enticing to take on these opportunities because you might have an opportunity to work with a really, really well-known advisor in blockchain, but some of them are starting to get busted by the SEC, so be careful. This all goes back to quality as well, and the new strategy is being patient. It's a little bit of this, like, going back to the basics. Get rich in days kind of environment. So pros are less scams, less unnecessary projects, and the hype is settling, which is good because it's providing opportunities. Investors and for these various projects who are looking to raise money, stricter regulations, and I think it's kind of the general consensus among marketers in this industry that you should be willing to spend about 5 to 10% of your intended fundraising goal on marketing, and it's not just marketing targeted at getting investors, is marketing your brand to establish that foundation to not just get the customers, but get the investors, because these are the traditional investors they're a lot more educated in this area and what it takes to run a successful business than those retail investors from the past. All right, so I wanted to quickly touch on the technology adoption life cycle. I'm guessing most people have seen this. It's not really rocket science, but just wanted to note that right now blockchain is in this kind of highlighted area. One could argue that there really is no company that's made it into the early majority, and for those of you who aren't familiar with this, I'll just briefly state what the highlighted area is. So innovators are those who are going to adopt your new technology first. They're the ones that generally are very technologically educated. They will do this for cheap or even free, or they'll want to do this for cheap or free, but they're the ones who also are going to be your allies and expect to be able to give you feedback on technical matters of your company and what you're creating. And then the next stage is early adopters, and these are more like visionaries. So they're buying into a dream, and they're taking this strategic opportunity and kind of taking a risk, but they're the ones who will be, if they're satisfied, they'll be willing to share this with their organizations and their communities. And easy to sell, but also hard to please. So, like I said, for the most part, this is where we live right now. And a lot of these projects and these companies I'm seeing are now taking this seriously. So with this being said, kind of at a very high level, my suggestions. So I think that the most important thing in any industry is to really take the time to create the foundation of your brand. This shouldn't be an afterthought. I truly believe that creating your core ideology should be the first thing that you ever consider doing. It's really important to be clear on what your values are as a company, what your mission is, what your vision is, and I know that this sounds like a no-brainer, but I come across so many of these projects where they've really, all they can think about is raising money, and they don't have a point of reference for who they are and what they care about. So that's really valuable, as well as your positioning. Why? Who are you doing this for? Who's your target audience? What's the competitive landscape? I meet so many projects and they're like, I don't even want to know who my competitors are. There is no competition. You should know. That's important, because you're going to need to be able to indirectly speak to that, or directly speak to that if someone asks. Also, that gives you the opportunity to understand your audience. And this is another thing that I see so often just in tech and the startup world in general, is that people don't really understand their audience. What they think they know based off of intuition, or maybe they read something, but really do your research, do customer testing, do interviews, get that feedback and actually really consider it, because the last thing you want is to do all this work based on your intuition, and then all this money, time, and effort later, you have to pivot because what you thought was the right way was actually completely, you were totally off. So next is express this to the world. Then build your community. All that stuff in creating your brand is going to guide you in how to do that. It's also going to guide you in making important business decisions and hiring a team, but also your marketing strategy. So what's your voice? Who are you targeting? Who's the community that you want to be on board with you? Not just the blockchain community. I mean, truthfully, the blockchain community is only going to be able to move the needle so much for you now, especially these days. And then get out there. I meet a lot of people who don't see any value in having any interaction with their potential customers in person. I think that doing digital, having a generous budget, or having a budget for digital marketing and online marketing is necessary. I also believe that for a lot of companies, you need to be willing to spend time and effort and money on doing the marketing offline. So it all depends on what it is that you're trying to accomplish, but it could look like sponsoring events, speaking engagements. It could also look like, if it's relevant to your company, put on a party or some kind of experiential event. But these are all really critical, because when you interact with people in person, they're going to be more likely to be loyal to your brand than the person that sees some kind of ad or got an email blast from a list that you bought that they didn't even sign up for. And lastly, elevator pitches. So I say pitches because you're going to have various audiences. And I mean this like, you want to have a general pitch, but also one for maybe devs, if that's relevant to you, one for investors, if that's relevant, one for general industry people, and the one for the people that you're trying to get as your customer or your target audience. I experience this so frequently that people give me extremely long-winded pitches of what they do. And granted, I work in this industry, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to get bored or I'm going to find this uninteresting. Make it enticing. You should make it so they want to ask you questions. And I know that these all sound basic, but it's amazing how many companies I come across that haven't even done anything on this list. So with that being said, my last word to complete this presentation is, it's really, really not worth playing in the legal gray area in this industry. I mean, it's not worth it in any area of life, but particularly here and right now, we're constantly seeing people get, the SEC comes knocking on their door, and the other day someone told me that they heard that the SEC will be or is monitoring every single blockchain company that has done some kind of token sale, ICO, public, private, whatever. And I don't really know the validity of that claim, and it's probably unlikely, but I'm a strong believer that you should really operate in this industry like the SEC will come knocking on your door any day. is just not worth it. And that wraps it up. So I also want to note, my partner is going to be speaking tomorrow on real estate, so if anyone has any interest on that, you should stick around tomorrow. But does anyone have any questions?
Lisa, can you just comment on DAA and what services you provide that are related to this topic?
Sure. So we do general management consulting. I do marketing. So prior to joining DAA, I mentioned that I worked in-house for a blockchain e-commerce company, and I did that for almost a year. So I have quite a lot of history in working in marketing and seeing the stages of what's happened in this industry and from an in-house perspective. But my partners come from real estate and investment banking and private equity, so they understand the world of the finance aspect and tokenomics, and we have some management consultants on our team. So we kind of do it all minus tech. But we do manage that, and we have a lot of partners in the industry that we work with. I mean, we have clients that we have just done kind of these one-off services, which is advising them on their tokenomics or doing marketing. And we also have clients where I like to say that we are hired on as like their blockchain department. You know, maybe you're an existing brand or company with a service that's not in blockchain and you want to integrate some blockchain, but you don't know exactly how and what it could look like. We come in with, you know, we can create the strategy, we can execute on an existing strategy, we can find the protocol partners, relevant industry partners. So it's a lot, but that's kind of in a nutshell what we do and what we offer.
Could you maybe just comment, just provide a range of sort of the smallest engagements that we take on to the largest, help understand? Like there's a brand I know that's getting ready to launch, and that's kind of limited budget, but so just maybe walk me through what a different engagement might look like.
As far as how much it would cost? So I don't like giving those quotes out, and it's not like a negotiation tactic. It's just, we don't have this like blanket sort of like proposal because all of it's custom. Everyone has a different need, so it's all gonna look different. And I have no interest in just doing this like, okay, your marketing, everyone's marketing is gonna be these like 10 bullet points, these 10 offerings. It's gonna be different. It just depends on the industry. It depends if you're ultimately B2B or B2C and what your needs are, and if you have a team, if you have community managers, if we provide that, what are we managing? So I can't really speak to that, but I can say we're a little boutique group and we're competitive and we like to bring on quality projects. So we're just as much as we like to make money, we like to be affiliated with quality companies that are doing interesting things out in the world. Yeah.
How many years were from settling your accounts? Or do you ever plan to settle your accounts?
I don't know if I can speak to that. Or rather, if I want to speak to that, but I will say, because of the nature of the industry, we are currently really conservative in taking cryptocurrency as a payment. It really depends, because being on this side of things, everyone wants to offer us all these different kinds of crypto, but we also have to, we have a team to pay. So that's all. I'm just going to leave it at that. Great question. Anyone else? Yes. Yes, all the time. Did everyone hear that question? So when I meet new people, do I experience skepticism, and what are the what do I propose or what do I explain to them? That's a tough one. Okay, so yes, I do experience it all the time. Funny, I just experienced it in my Ubered ride yesterday from the airport to my hotel, and the guy was asking me why I was here, and I said, he was an older gentleman, and I said, for a conference, and he kept asking. I said, okay, blockchain, because I knew the second I'd say blockchain, chances are that it would be like, well, what's that? And mind you, I had been flying for quite some time, so I was like, do I want to get into this conversation? And so I had to kind of guess who my audience was, and so I spoke to, you know, what's going on with data right now and our personal data and how that's being used without our knowledge and the way that that's being manipulated. And so I tend to kind of have to make a guess of where they're coming from and what they're going to understand. But there's so many applications. So if I'm going to sit down and try and explain it all, like, they're going to be bored, I'm going to be bored, I will lose them pretty quickly. So that's kind of it. I mean, my default is, for people who have zero understanding, I do a really high-level explanation of, you know, what's available with data, and touching on supply chain is an easy one for people to get. I mean, although that's not like the main solution, but, and of course, I do the whole, like, do you understand Bitcoin? Do you know Bitcoin? Yeah, so Bitcoin exists because, you know, but, so if anyone's figured out how to do that efficiently and gracefully, let me know, because I'm still trying to figure it out. Everyone's got another opinion. Funny thing is, just to complete on this thought, as I got out of my Uber, the guy said, well, you know, I know that everyone's got my personal information, so I don't really care about this blockchain thing. I was like, all right, so I didn't make my point. I was like, well, if you're a university, you probably want to have it would be useful for you to have your transcripts on the blockchain because nobody can alter those, or medical records, and it keeps it safer, and he just didn't care for that. So anyway, yes?
So live event ticketing is a great example of a high-value digital asset.
Yeah.
Right? So tell me a little bit about what you've done with Ticketmaster and, you know,
What I've done with Ticketmaster?
yeah, or you brought them up.
Oh.
You know, what's the play there?
These are not, so these, to be clear, these aren't people I've worked on, or clients I've worked with. I was just giving examples of, these are big names that are engaging with blockchain. Does that alter your question, though? Does that, yeah.
No, I'm just curious what your take is on the play there with that as a digital asset and how blockchain would apply to that.
On ticketing? Yeah. We have a client that, in music, and that's a solution that we're working on. I think there's so much opportunity with ticketing and booking, especially for live events. There's a huge secondary market for reselling tickets, right? And also, you know, there's a lot of fraudulent ticket sales. So you come across that, or is that people, you know, scalpers will buy it and then inflate the price. So there's a lot of opportunity there. There's also a lot of opportunity in integrating some kind of reward system into the ticketing and booking. And yeah, so I know quite a few companies that are exploring this. Not quite, I would say nobody's fully figured it out or executed on this yet, but this is also something that we're looking at for a client of ours, is how do we incorporate a utility token into as a rewards system and incorporate that with ticketing. And so you kind of have all the benefits of, like, you can also control the secondary market of this ticketing as well. It can probably you'll only have it exist on this one platform, so nobody's gonna get gouged. Or if you really wanted to see, I don't know, Justin Timberlake, with the only tickets available online are like wildly expensive because scalpers went in and got them right away. Or there's these bots that buy them. You know, like you're not gonna come across that. So, yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question. I know I went on a little bit of a tangent. But that is I actually love that use case. I think there's a lot of possibility there. There's quite a few use cases that are a little bit more like in theory, and nobody's really ironed it out yet. But this is one that I personally find interesting, because we're starting to see there's a ticketing company out in New York called Block Party that's really spending a lot of time and energy on just this, on live events, and making sure that, you know, this kind of secondary market is controlled and people aren't getting gouged. And yeah.
The biggest challenge is bots.
Yeah.
Right? That's the biggest complaint.
Yeah.
Tickets are sold out before they go on sale.
Absolutely.
So, and
So I'm not a very technical person, but I imagine that that's a possibility with blockchain. I mean, I could get back to you, but otherwise there's no point in doing this. Just like, so what, you put it on the blockchain. Who cares? Yeah, yeah. 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 Is there any other questions? Yes.
So one question I have comes from a meeting I had a week and a half ago. When you're talking to potential companies and they have a product where there's not an actual portion of it that will really kind of be B2C, when you talk about the fact that the community, which is further related to you, how does that change things up when you're never really going to go to the retail market?
Yeah, so I mean, your community doesn't have to be like your social media community or these like, you know, the individuals who are very rah-rah about your what you're creating. It could be a community of companies, it could be just partners, it could be people that are your strategic partners, but it's basically your allies and people who care about what you're doing. But there is an element of, you can still create a community that is individuals by what you stand for, the content you create. You know, if your CEO is a thought leader in that specific area. I mean, people are very interested and hungry to receive more information that is relevant to what they're interested in. So there's a way to play off that. Even if it's B2B, it's just not going to be, it's not going to look like the kind of B2C world. It also is the strategy of, a big one is, how do you have your team, your leadership, your CEO be a thought leader and be seen as a thought leader, because that's going to also be really valuable for your company, particularly if it's B2B. And which also I had mentioned before, like, you can still do things that are out in the real, you could still go speak at conferences, you could still do things that engage the community, because as long as people remember your brand, that's going to be valuable to you, regardless of if they're going to be, you know, they're necessarily going to be using it or not. Yes?
How do you bridge the chasm between blockchain community and you being in a like institutional investment community, private equity world, where you have, you know, very serious people managing billions of dollars of pension money
Yeah.
in the institutional world, and then on the other side you've got John McAfee
Yeah.
sitting put.
Yeah.
How do you bridge that as a marketer?
How do I bridge it as a marketer? Well, so I don't believe I mentioned this, but there's a lot right now. A lot of these Fortune 500 companies have corporate venture capital arms, and a lot of them are not just exploring blockchain, but they're investing in it, and they're not seeing it as this like shiny new thing. They're just looking at it like another part of tech. And is it valuable? Does it make sense? Is whatever they're creating going to make a difference, blockchain or not? So I'd say is a lot easier. This time last year was a lot harder. So thankfully, the space is shifting. The traditional investor space is kind of shifting. But I'm seeing that still, I mean, there is that gap. We still need to kind of cross over. And as a marketer, my whole thing is like, you don't need to. Blockchain, great. Everyone gets the value proposition who gets this industry, and you can explain it. But I think the focus shouldn't be just on the blockchain part of it. It's like, why are you doing this? And then why blockchain? And there isn't as much skepticism in the traditional investment world and traditional finance world as there once was. So that's great. That's great for what I do, really. And yeah, I've recently been having quite a lot of conversations with corporate VCs, and they've been saying like, send us more blockchain projects. We're curious. I mean, I spoke with some VCs at Verizon and Sony, and they both were saying, like, you're in Los Angeles, tell us what's going on there. We need more kind of potential investments in the pipeline in media and entertainment. You see what's going on. So thankfully, that interest is there. Yeah. Any more questions? That's it. All right, cool. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Yeah. I look forward to meeting all of you.